For 25 years, she followed every order without question, until she discovered that her own commanding generals were responsible for the deaths of American soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen had built her entire identity around two words: "Yes, sir." In her quarter-century of military service, she had never questioned a direct order from a superior officer. That unwavering loyalty had earned her 3 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, and the respect of every soldier who had ever served under her command. NNBUT on a humid Tuesday morning in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that loyalty would be shattered forever. Sarah was reviewing supply manifests in her cramped office when Sergeant Martinez knocked on her door. The young man's face was pale, his hands trembling as he held a manila folder. "Ma'am, I think you need to see this. But first, I need to know I can trust you." Sarah looked up from her paperwork. In 25 years, she'd never had a subordinate question her trustworthiness. "No, Sergeant, speak freely." "No. Ma'am, what would you do if you discovered that generals were selling our weapons to the people killing our soldiers?" Sarah's blood ran cold. "I demand to see the evidence immediately." What Sergeant Martinez showed her next would destroy everything she believed about military leadership. An NTHE folder contained photographs, shipping manifests, and financial records that painted a picture so horrifying that Sarah's first instinct was to dismiss it as an elaborate hoax. And American weapons, M4 rifles, grenades, ammunition, even advanced targeting systems, were being systematically diverted from military supplies and sold to arms. But this wasn't random theft by corrupt soldiers. NNTHE authorization signatures belonged to 3 generals. General Morrison, her direct superior, whom she'd served under for 8 years. General Phillips, the base commander she'd known since she was a lieutenant. General Rodriguez, who had personally recommended her for promotion just 6 months ago. "None, Sergeant. Where did you get this?" "Nah, ma'am, I work in logistics. I started noticing discrepancies 6 months ago. Shipments that didn't match manifests. Equipment that disappeared from inventory but never showed up in field reports. So I started documenting everything." Sarah studied the documents. Her training in military intelligence told her they were authentic, but her heart refused to accept what they meant. "No. These weapons, the serial numbers." "Martinez, do you understand what you're showing me?" "Nah, yes, ma'am. Some of these weapons were used in the attack on Forward Operating Base Charlie, the attack that killed Captain Williams and his entire squad." Nara remembered Captain Williams, a bright young officer with a wife and twin daughters. She had personally written the letter to his widow explaining that he died serving his country with honor. NNBUT, if these documents were real, he had died from American weapons sold by American generals. "Ma'am, there's more." NNBUT. The truly shocking revelation was still to come. Martinez handed her a second folder, this one containing intercepted communications between the generals and their buyers. Sarah read email exchanges that discussed inventory management and surplus. But what made her hands shake was discovering how long this had been going on. In 3 years. For 3 years, while she had been faithfully executing orders and trusting her chain of command, her commanding officers had been selling weapons that were used to kill American soldiers. "Nan Martinez, have you shown this to anyone else?" "Nan. I wasn't sure who to trust. For all I know, this goes all the way up to the Pentagon." Sarah walked to her window and looked out at the base where she'd served faithfully for 8 years. Soldiers were conducting training exercises, preparing for deployments, trusting that their equipment would protect them and their leadership would keep them safe. "Ma'am, what do we do? Ma'am, what do we do?" Ma'am Sarah turned back to face the young sergeant. She thought about her 25-year career, her pension that was just 5 years away, her spotless record that could open doors in the private sector after retirement. Then she thought about Captain Williams' twin daughters, who would grow up without their father because generals had chosen profit over loyalty. "We're going to destroy them," she said quietly. "Ma'am, we're going to gather every piece of evidence we can find, and we're going to bring down every officer involved in this conspiracy, no matter how high their rank." NNBUT. What Sarah didn't know was that the generals had already discovered Martinez's investigation. That evening, Sarah was working late in her office when her secure phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, Lieutenant Colonel Chen. "Sarah, this is General Morrison. We need to talk. Name, sir, of course. Would you like me to come to your office? No. Meet me at the old ammunition depot in 20 minutes. Come alone. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. In 25 years of service, she'd never been asked to meet a superior officer at an isolated location after hours. NNBUT. She had also never disobeyed a direct order. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in the abandoned ammunition depot as General Morrison emerged from the shadows. The man she had respected and trusted for 8 years looked different somehow. Colder, more calculating. Sarah, I understand Sergeant Martinez has been asking questions about supply discrepancies. Nen, sir, as his commanding officer, I'm handling the matter internally. Nen, good. Because sometimes young soldiers get confused about complex logistics operations. They see patterns that aren't really there. General Morrison stepped closer, and Sarah noticed he wasn't alone. 2 men in civilian clothes flanked him, their postures suggesting military training and concealed weapons. Nen, Sarah, you've had an exemplary career. 25 years of service. Outstanding efficiency reports. A clear path to full colonel within 2 years. It would be tragic if unfounded allegations derailed such a promising trajectory. Sarah understood the threat perfectly. But she also understood something else. General Morrison wouldn't be threatening her if he wasn't desperate. Sir, I always follow proper channels for any concerns. Excellent. I knew I could count on your loyalty. As Sarah walked back to her car, she realized that her investigation had just become a matter of life and death. This is where everything changed forever. And Sarah spent the next week in what she privately called operational mode. To everyone around her, she appeared to be conducting routine business. But in reality, she was building the most important case of her career. NNSHE started by securing the evidence. Using her access as a lieutenant colonel, she copied financial records, supply manifests, and communication logs onto encrypted drives. She photographed documents during late-night sessions in secure offices. She even used her contacts in military intelligence to verify the authenticity of serial numbers and shipping records. NNBUT. Sarah's most dangerous move was reaching out to other soldiers who might have noticed similar discrepancies. Captain Foster from the 82nd Airborne had questions about equipment shortages during his last deployment. Lieutenant Murphy from Logistics had flagged unusual shipping patterns that were dismissed by his superiors. Lieutenant Williams from Military Police had investigated several break-ins at supply. Sarah couldn't risk exposing her investigation, but she needed to verify that the corruption was as extensive as the evidence suggested. What she discovered was worse than she had imagined. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. NNTHE weapons trafficking wasn't limited to 3 generals. It was a network involving at least 12 officers across 4 different bases, with connections to private military contractors and foreign buyers who were supplying enemies of the United States. Sarah realized she wasn't just investigating corruption, she was uncovering treason. NNTWO weeks into her investigation, Sarah received a call that would force her to choose between her career and her conscience. Ma'am, this is Sergeant Martinez. I need to see you immediately. It's about my family. Sarah found Martinez in the base chapel, tears streaming down his face. Ma'am, my wife received a phone call this morning. Someone told her that asking too many questions about military supplies could be dangerous for military families. They mentioned our daughter by name. They knew which school she attends. Sarah felt rage building in her chest. Threatening a soldier was one thing, but threatening a child crossed every line of military and personal honor. Martinez, are you certain this is connected to our investigation? Ma'am, we're the only 2 people who know about the evidence, and they specifically mentioned supply discrepancies. And Sarah made a decision that would end her military career but potentially save countless lives. Ni Martinez, I want you to take emergency leave. Take your family somewhere safe. I'll handle this from here. Nam, I can't let you face this alone. Yes, you can. Because I'm ordering you to protect your family. And because what I'm about to do requires someone with 25 years of service and nothing left to lose. And Sarah spent that night writing 2 letters. One was her resignation from the United States Army, effective immediately. The other was a detailed report to the FBI, complete with copies of all evidence she had gathered. NNBUT before she could send either letter. General Morrison made a mistake that would destroy his entire conspiracy. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. NNTHE next morning, Sarah arrived at her office to find it had been searched. Her computer had been wiped, her filing cabinets emptied, and her personal items scattered across the floor. NNBUT, whoever had conducted the search, had missed something crucial. Sarah had hidden backup drives inside a false bottom of her coffee mug, a hiding place she'd learned during intelligence training 20 years earlier. More importantly, the break-in proved that her investigation had been discovered, which meant she was now in immediate danger. Sarah called in sick and drove to a secure location off base but as she worked, her phone rang with a call that would change everything. Lieutenant Colonel Chen, this is Special Agent Johnson with the FBI. We've been monitoring communications related to a federal investigation into military arms trafficking. We understand you may have relevant information. Sarah's heart raced. Either the FBI was legitimately investigating the same conspiracy, or General Morrison had contacts in federal law enforcement who were trying to trap her and Agent Johnson. I'll need to verify your identity before discussing any sensitive matters. Nen, of course. I'm sending you encrypted contact information, but Lieutenant Colonel, I need you to know that your life may be in danger. We have evidence that the subjects of our investigation have used violence to silence potential witnesses. Once Sarah made the most important decision of her career, Money Agent Johnson. I have evidence that will bring down 3 generals and expose a multi-million-dollar arms trafficking conspiracy. But I need protection for myself and the families of other soldiers involved. We can provide that protection. How soon can you meet? Nam, give me 2 hours to secure my evidence. NNBUT. As Sarah prepared to turn over her investigation to federal authorities, she received a call that would test every principle she'd learned in 25 years of service. You won't believe what happened next. And Sarah was preparing to leave for her FBI meeting when her office phone rang. The caller ID showed General Morrison's direct line. Sarah, I understand you've been having conversations with federal agents. Sarah's blood ran cold. How could he know about her contact with the FBI? Nen. Sir, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Nen, Sarah, let's not play games. You have evidence that could damage national security and compromise ongoing military operations. I need you to surrender that evidence immediately. Sir, if there are national security concerns, shouldn't we involve appropriate federal oversight? General Morrison's laugh was cold. Sarah, you're a career officer who has never understood the bigger picture. Sometimes protecting America requires making difficult choices that people like you can't comprehend. Sir, selling American weapons to enemies who kill American soldiers isn't protecting America. You're thinking too small, Sarah. The profits from those sales fund black operations that keep this country safe. Operations that Congress would never approve, that the public could never know about. Sarah realized that General Morrison actually believed he was a patriot. In his mind, arms trafficking was justified if it funded secret military operations. Nem, sir, I've dedicated 25 years of my life to serving this country. I won't be part of getting American soldiers killed. Nen, Sarah, you have 1 hour to deliver all evidence to my office. If you don't, I'll be forced to take measures to protect national security. NTHE line went dead. And Sarah looked at her watch. She was supposed to meet Agent Johnson in 90 minutes. But General Morrison had just given her 1 hour to surrender evidence or face unspecified measures. NNSHE made a decision that would define the rest of her life. Instead of running or hiding, Sarah drove directly to General Morrison's office. And this is where everything comes together. And Sarah walked into General Morrison's office carrying a single briefcase. The general was waiting with the same 2 civilian contractors who had flanked him at the ammunition depot. Nen, Sarah, I knew you'd make the right decision. I have, sir. Sarah placed the briefcase on General Morrison's desk and opened it. Inside were printed copies of every document, photograph, and financial record she had gathered over 3 weeks of investigation. General Morrison's face went pale as he realized the scope of evidence Sarah had compiled. Nen, Sarah, where are the digital copies? Nen, sir, there are no digital copies. General Morrison smiled with relief. Excellent. Then this matter is closed. No, sir. It's just beginning. Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a small digital recorder that had been running throughout their conversation. Sir, You've just confessed to arms trafficking and funding illegal black operations. This recording, along with copies of all evidence that I uploaded to secure FBI servers this morning, will ensure that you and your conspirators face justice, and General Morrison's face transformed from relief to rage. Sarah, you have no idea what you've just done. Yes, sir. I've honored my oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. NNTHE civilian contractors moved towards Sarah, but she had one more surprise. And, gentlemen, I wouldn't move if I were you. Agent Johnson, you can come in now. NNFBI. Agent Johnson entered the office with 4 federal agents, weapons drawn. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit treason, arms trafficking, and violation of federal weapons statutes. As handcuffs were placed on the general, who had commanded her respect for 8 years, Sarah felt something she had never experienced in 25 years of military service. Complete moral certainty. Everyone thought the story was over, but the real impact was just beginning. And then, she was testifying before the House Armed Services Committee about military corruption and the need for stronger oversight of arms trafficking. And General Morrison had pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. General Phillips had been sentenced to life in prison. General Rodriguez had cooperated with federal investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. And 12 other officers had been arrested. The arms trafficking network had been completely dismantled. Millions of dollars in illegal profits had been recovered and returned to military budgets for soldier safety equipment. NNBUT Sarah's military career was over. Despite being hailed as a hero by Congress and the media, she had been forced to retire early. The military establishment never forgave officers who exposed internal corruption, regardless of how necessary or justified their actions were. Lieutenant Colonel Chen, the committee chairman, asked, "Do you regret your decision to expose this conspiracy?" Sarah thought about Captain Williams' twin daughters, who would grow up knowing their father's death had been avenged. She thought about the American soldiers whose lives had been saved by stopping the flow of weapons to their enemies. She thought about Martinez's family, who were now safe because the conspiracy had been destroyed. Sir, I regret that it took 25 years for me to understand that following orders isn't the same as serving your country. Real service sometimes means standing up to the very people who command you. What advice would you give to current military officers who discover similar corruption? Sarah looked directly into the television cameras that were broadcasting her testimony across the nation. Document everything. Trust your conscience over your career. And remember that your oath is to the Constitution, not to any individual officer, no matter how high their rank. As Sarah left the hearing room, she realized that losing her military career had been the price of finding her true purpose, ensuring that American soldiers were protected by leaders worthy of their sacrifice. 1 year later, Sarah Chen worked as a federal consultant, helping the FBI and Defense Department investigate military corruption. Her expertise in military systems and her insider knowledge of how cover-ups operated made her invaluable in protecting American soldiers from the very people sworn to lead them. NNHER phone rang as she reviewed case files in her Washington, D.C. office. NNMs. Chen, this is Major Thompson from Fort Hood. I have some concerns about supply discrepancies that I think you should know about. Sarah smiled. The network of honest military officers who contacted her had grown to include hundreds of soldiers across all branches of service. Her investigation into 3 generals had inspired a new generation of military officers to prioritize integrity over careerism. And Major Thompson, I'll need you to document everything you've observed. And remember, your oath is to the Constitution, not to any individual officer. Yes, ma'am. I understand completely. As Sarah prepared to investigate another case of potential military corruption, she reflected on the irony of her situation. She had lost her military career by being the best soldier she had ever been. In NBUT, in a world where corruption could cost American lives, someone had to be willing to sacrifice everything for the truth. Sarah Chen had learned that real military leadership meant protecting soldiers from every enemy, including the ones wearing stars on their shoulders. NTHE evidence that brought down generals had also revealed the truth about honor. It's not about following orders, but about having the courage to do what's right, regardless of the cost.